The HOA charged me $75 to cross a road I legally owned. The first time Denise Mercer stopped my truck on that damn road, she smiled like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Steel gate, orange cones, HOA stickers slapped onto windshields like tickets at a county fair. She told me I owed $75 to cross into town. Problem was, I just bought 3,000 acres surrounding the lake, and neither of us knew yet that the road, the bridge, and the entire spillway entrance legally belonged to me. By the time the sheriff arrived, half the valley was about to learn the truth the hard way. And if you enjoy stories about quiet people standing their ground with paperwork instead of panic, stick around and subscribe. Around here, the fences are real. The land fights are messy, and the truth usually takes the long road home. The folding chair sat in the middle of the damn road like somebody had dragged their living room into the mountains. It was 6:12 in the morning. My F-350 rumbled uphill carrying 2 pallets of cattle feed in the bed while steam curled from the coffee balanced in my cup holder. I'd owned the ranch for exactly 11 days. And until that moment, the only thing I'd fought out there was bad fencing and a stubborn water pump. Then I rounded the bend beside Blackwater Lake and saw orange traffic cones stretched across the road. A steel gate blocked the bridge over the spillway, and standing beside it in a pale blue polo shirt was a woman holding a clipboard like she worked for the state. I eased the truck to a stop. The lake water below the bridge flashed silver in the sunrise. Wind pushed across the spillway, carrying the smell of wet concrete and pine sap. The whole setup looked temporary, except for the confidence written all over the woman's face. She walked toward my window before I even put the truck in park. "Morning," she said brightly. "Road maintenance toll is $75 for non-residents." I looked past her. A hand-painted sign leaned against the barrier. Blackwater Pines Private Access Authorized HOA Residents. "Only you serious?" I asked. Her smile tightened, practiced, and sharp. Very Denise Mercer, president of Blackwater Pines Estates. She tapped the clipboard. "Residents use windshield permits. Non-residents pay per crossing." A younger guy stepped out from behind a parked ATV, wearing a black hoodie with Hosh Security printed across the chest in cracked white letters. Couldn't have been older than 25. He carried a roll of blue permit stickers in one hand. Without asking, he leaned through my open window and slapped one onto my windshield. "Lot access temporary pass." I grabbed his wrist before he could pull away. "Don't touch my truck again." The kid froze. Denise didn't. "Ty's just doing his job," she said calmly. "You'll need the sticker visible while crossing HOA property." I let go of him slowly. The thing about people who abuse authority is they usually expect anger first. That's the rhythm they understand. Yell back, threaten, lose control, makes their job easier. I'd spent 30 years with the Army Corps of Engineers negotiating land disputes after floods and dam failures. I learned a long time ago, the quiet man in the room usually had the leverage, even if nobody knew it yet. 2 trucks rolled up behind me, carrying ranch hands headed toward town. Neither driver said a word. One older man in a feed store cap reached his arm out the window and handed Denise cash without even looking at her. That bothered me more than the gate. People around here had already learned to keep their heads down. I looked back at Denise. "Who owns this road?" "Blackwater Pines maintains it." "That's not what I asked." Her smile flattened a little. "This bridge provides access to our community. We pay for upkeep, snow removal, resurfacing. Outsiders contribute crossing fees, standard practice." "You got paperwork for that?" Ty laughed under his breath. Denise held out her hand instead. $75, Mr. Cole." "Mr. Cole." The way she said it told me she already knew who I was. I pulled my wallet out slowly and counted the bills into her hand. Not because I accepted the toll, because sometimes the fastest way to learn how a system works is to let the people running it think they've won. Denise scribbled on a yellow receipt pad. Road access fee, Blackwater. Pines, ho, she tore the receipt free and handed it over like she was issuing a hunting license. Keep that visible on future crossings, she said. And if you plan to stay in the valley long term, the HOA board can discuss annual access rates. I folded the receipt once and tucked it into the console. Then I noticed something half buried beside the spillway wall. Concrete marker, white paint nearly gone. Army Corps survey stamp, old, maybe decades old. Strange thing to find beside what was supposedly a private HOA road. I looked at the bridge again. Heavy concrete supports, reinforced spillway channels, federal-grade flood structure. Way overbuilt for a gated subdivision entrance. Ty knocked twice on my hood. You holding up traffic, man. I shifted the truck into gear. As I rolled forward, Denise stepped beside my window one last time. One more thing, she said softly. Cross without permission again, and I'll call the sheriff for trespassing. I looked at her, then at the lake, then at the old survey marker, disappearing into the weeds beside the concrete wall. And for the first time since buying the ranch, something cold settled into my stomach. Because federal survey markers don't end up on private HOA property by accident. I drove across the bridge slowly. In the rearview mirror, I watched Denise collect another toll from the ranch truck behind me, while Ty leaned against the gate grinning, like they'd just defended the border from an invasion. 3 miles later, I turned onto my ranch road and killed the engine beside the barn. The morning went quiet, except for wind moving across the pasture. I sat there, staring at the blue permit sticker stuck to my windshield. Then I looked toward the stack of unopened closing documents sitting on my kitchen table inside the farmhouse. 11 days earlier, I'd bought 3,000 acres surrounding Blackwater Lake from a bankruptcy auction outside Helena. I'd skimmed the deed, checked the water rights, verified the grazing permits, but I hadn't gone through the full survey packet yet. Now all I could think about was that old Army Corps marker beside the spillway wall, and one question I suddenly couldn't ignore. Why would an HOA be collecting tolls on what looked like federal dam infrastructure? The closing packet sat exactly where I'd left it on the kitchen table, beside an unopened box of tools and yesterday's coffee mug. 28 pages thick, county seals, survey maps, easement records. I stared at it for a long minute, then my phone buzzed. Unknown local number, I answered. Cole, you paid her, huh? Older male voice, gravelly, amused. Who's this? Walter Griggs. Ranch east of yours. Figured you'd meet Denise Mercer sooner or later. I leaned against the counter. She runs toll booths often? A dry chuckle came through the speaker. Son, Denise Mercer runs this whole valley. He hung up before I could ask anything else. By noon, I was back outside replacing warped boards along the horse fence near the north pasture. The work helped settle my head. Hammer, nails, straight lines, things that made sense. That's when the silver Lexus came rolling up my gravel drive. Denise Mercer stepped out wearing sunglasses and the same pale blue polo from the bridge. Not a wrinkle on her, not a speck of dust on her boots, even though she'd walked through half a mile of ranch gravel. Ty climbed out behind her carrying a clipboard. They moved like people arriving for an inspection, not guests. Denise stopped beside my fence and smiled. Mr. Cole, thought I'd stop by personally and discuss your compliance issues. My what? Ty handed her the clipboard. She flipped through several stapled pages. Visible livestock fencing in violation of Blackwater Pines, scenic preservation standards. Unapproved generator noise after quiet hours. Exterior structures painted with non-compliant stain colors. I stared at her. You drove 3 miles onto private ranch land to tell me my fence color violates HOA rules. That depends, she said calmly. Do you intend to continue using our dam road? There it was again. I set the hammer down slowly. Lady, I don't live in your subdivision. No, she agreed. But your property relies on HOA-maintained access. That road isn't yours. The smile never left her face, but something colder slid underneath it. Mr. Cole. People who move into this valley usually understand one thing pretty quickly. She gestured toward the mountains surrounding the lake. There's only one reliable road through Blackwater Pass once winter hits. Contractors use it, fuel deliveries use it, ambulances use it. Ty smirked beside her. Denise took one step closer, and we control it. Wind rattled the cottonwoods near the creek below us. Somewhere out in the pasture, a gate chain clanged against metal. I looked at the paperwork in her hand. How much? Excuse me, the fine. $500 initial non-compliance assessment. She said it like she was discussing parking fees. Failure to comply compounds weekly. I almost laughed. Instead, I reached out and took the notice from her fingers. Blackwater Pines HOA violation notice. The document actually had my ranch address printed on it. Ty crossed his arms. You ignore that stuff. Liens start happening. I looked up at him. You threatening to put a lien on land your HOA doesn't own. Denise answered before he could. If you use our road, you're under our rules. There was no hesitation in her voice. That was the dangerous part. She believed it, not pretending, not bluffing. Years of nobody pushing back had turned her into the kind of person who confused routine with legality. I folded the violation notice once. You done? Her smile sharpened. For today. She walked past me toward the barn. Before I realized what she was doing, she pulled blue painter's tape from her pocket and slapped the violation notice directly onto the weathered wood beside the barn door, like she was tagging condemned property. 7 days, she said over her shoulder. After that, the penalties increase. Ty grinned at me on the way back to the Lexus. You should probably read your HOA packet, man. Then they drove off in a cloud of gravel dust. I stood there, listening to the sound of the engine disappear down my road. Not angry yet, just alert. Because normal people don't carry tape around to post fake violations on strangers' barns. I pulled the paper off slowly and went back inside. The ranch house smelled like sawdust and cold coffee. Wind pushed against the old windows hard enough to make the glass hum. The title packet still sat on the kitchen table waiting for me. I loosened my work gloves and finally opened it. County plat maps slid across the wood surface. Property boundaries, water rights, survey coordinates. One folded document near the bottom caught my eye immediately. Federal Flood Control Easement Reference. I unfolded it halfway, then stopped, because stamped across the bottom corner was the exact same insignia I'd seen beside the spillway that morning. United States Army Corps of Engineers, and suddenly Denise Mercer's confidence made a whole lot less sense, but a whole lot more danger. I pulled the folded easement document completely open and spread it flat across the kitchen table, beside the county plat map. The paper was old enough to crack at the creases. Army Corps Flood Control Project, Blackwater Retention Dam, Federal Maintenance Access Corridor. A black survey line cut directly across the spillway bridge, and the parcel number typed beside it matched the parcel number on my deed. I sat down slowly. Outside, wind rolled across the lake hard enough to rattle the loose tin roofing stacked behind the barn. Rain started tapping against the windows. I reached for the rest of the closing documents. Boundary surveys, tax assessments, GIS overlays. The deeper I dug, the quieter the room felt, because piece by piece, the shape of the problem started coming together. The dam road didn't run beside my ranch. It ran through it. I unfolded the largest survey sheet across the table and grabbed the ruler from my toolbox. The red property boundary line wrapped around Blackwater Lake, crossed the spillway, and continued north past the subdivision entrance, the bridge, the road, the spillway controls. Every inch sat inside my property line, not close to it, inside it, a full 63 feet from the nearest HOA boundary marker. I checked the measurements twice, then a third time. Same result every time. Blackwater Pines HOA did not own the road they were charging people to cross. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the blue permit sticker still attached to my windshield outside the kitchen window. The thing looked different now. Not authority. Evidence. My phone buzzed again. "Walter Griggs, you opened the packet yet?" he asked immediately. "You know about the bridge?" A pause, then a low whistle. "So you figured it out." I looked back at the survey maps. How long has Denise been collecting tolls? Her father-in-law started it when they built the subdivision around 2010. Denise took over after he died. People just accepted it. Most folks out here don't got money for lawyers. His voice hardened. And Denise knows exactly who to pressure. Rain hammered the roof harder now. Walter continued. Winter comes. That road's life or death. Snow closes the North Pass every year. If she blocks the damn road, ambulances got a detour 40 miles through county timber roads. I thought about the ranch hands paying cash without speaking that morning. About Denise taping fake violations to my barn. Not confidence, control. She ever show anyone legal paperwork? I asked. Walter laughed outright this time. Hell no. She just says the HOA owns it long enough and loud enough people stop asking. I looked down at the Army Corps easement again. Somebody should have asked. Maybe somebody finally did. The line went dead. I spent the next hour pulling records online through the county GIS portal. Tax records confirmed everything. For 14 straight years, property taxes on the Spillway Bridge and dam access corridor had been billed to the ranch parcel now under my name. Not the HOA, not Blackwater Pines, my ranch. Which meant Denise Mercer had been collecting private tolls on land her HOA never owned while threatening residents with fines and access restrictions. The realization settled cold in my chest. Not because of the money, because of the liability. Emergency access, maintenance authority, federal flood infrastructure. If Denise was wrong about ownership, then every threat she'd made carried a whole different meaning. Headlights swept across the front windows. I stood immediately. Silver Lexus again. Denise stepped out carrying an umbrella while Ty stayed in the SUV. I opened the front door before she reached the porch. That was quick, I said. Her eyes flicked past me toward the papers spread across the kitchen table, then back to my face. Just following up on your compliance notice. It's been 4 hours. She ignored that, Mr. Cole. I want to be clear about something before this becomes unpleasant. Her tone stayed smooth and almost friendly. Blackwater Pines has managed that road a very long time. We take community stability seriously. You mean toll collection? Her smile faded slightly. We maintain infrastructure. You got ownership records? The umbrella stopped moving. Rain hissed around us in the dark. For the first time since I'd met her, Denise Mercer hesitated. Only a second, but it was enough. Ownership isn't the issue, she said carefully. Control is. There it was, not legal language, power language. I crossed my arms. You threaten everybody around here with fake fines? Her jaw tightened. You're new here, Mr. Cole. Let me save you some trouble. Men come into this valley all the time, thinking paperwork matters more than reality. And reality is what? That road stays open because we run it. I stepped aside slightly and let her see the survey map spread across the kitchen table. Color drained from her face, so fast it almost looked painful. Just a flicker, then gone, but I caught it. She recognized the documents instantly. And that told me something even more important than the property line. Denise Mercer already knew. She knew the road wasn't hers, which meant every toll, every threat, every fake violation. Every single thing she'd done out there had been deliberate. Ty honked once from the Lexus. Denise backed away from the porch, slowly. Rainwater dripped from the edge of her umbrella. This valley can get very difficult for outsiders, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked back to the SUV. I watched the taillights disappear down the ranch road. Then I looked back at the survey maps on the table. And for the first time since buying the ranch, I realized this wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was evidence. I started a folder for her before sunrise. Plain Manila, black marker across the tab, Blackwater Pines. Inside went the yellow toll receipt, photographs of the bridge, screenshots of county tax records, and copies of the flood control easement maps. I printed everything twice. One set for me. One set for whoever eventually needed convincing. At 7:03 the next morning, I drove toward town again. This time the checkpoint looked different. Concrete barriers blocked both lanes of the dam road. Fresh plywood signs stood zip-tied to metal posts. HOA. Resident access only, authorized vehicles required. 2 pickups sat beside the spillway with hazard lights flashing, while Ty Mercer leaned against the hood drinking coffee like he owned the valley. I stopped 30 feet short of the barrier. Denise stepped out from behind one of the trucks, already smiling. "You ignored your violation notice," she called out. "I left the engine running. You block this road often, when necessary. That spillway is federal infrastructure." "No," she corrected smoothly. "It's community infrastructure." I reached down and turned my dashcam toward the barrier. That got her attention immediately. Ty noticed too. "You recording this?" "Yup." Denise's smile tightened. "Mr. Cole, until your compliance issues are resolved, your access privileges are suspended." I almost admired the confidence it took to say something that ridiculous out loud. "My access privileges. You are currently using a privately maintained HOA roadway. You got a deed? We have operational authority." "That's not what I asked." Ty shoved away from the pickup. "You need to turn around." Instead, I put the truck in park. That changed the energy instantly, because bullies depend on momentum. Once somebody stops moving, they start losing rhythm. Denise folded her arms. "If you refuse to leave, I'll contact the sheriff." "Go ahead." For the first time since I'd met her, uncertainty crossed her face. Small, fast, but real. "You want me to call? I'd appreciate it." Ty looked between us. "You serious?" I nodded once. "Very." Denise pulled out her phone. The wind coming off the lake pushed hard against the plywood signs, making them creak against the barriers while she spoke to dispatch. I stayed quiet and let the dash cam run. 9 minutes later, a county sheriff's SUV rolled up from the north side of the bridge. Sheriff Nolan Briggs stepped out. Tall guy, late 50s, gray mustache, calm eyes. The kind of lawman who'd spent enough years around rural disputes to know loud people were usually hiding weak positions. Denise started talking before his door even shut. He threatened residents yesterday, refused HOA directives, and now he's obstructing community access. Sheriff Briggs listened without interrupting. Then he looked at me. "Your side?" I handed him the yellow toll receipt first. "Yesterday morning this HOA charged me $75 to cross this bridge." He studied the paper. Then I handed him the plat map. "This morning they blocked the only road into my ranch and claimed ownership of federal spillway infrastructure, sitting 63 feet inside my property line." That got his full attention. Briggs unfolded the map against the hood of his SUV while wind snapped at the corners. Ty shifted uneasily beside the barriers. Denise stayed perfectly still. The sheriff traced the survey line with one finger. "You got supporting documents for this?" I handed him the Army Corps easement copy. Then the county tax records. Briggs took his time reading. That was the moment Denise Mercer finally stopped smiling. Not because he believed me yet, because he was checking. People like Denise survive by counting on nobody checking. Sheriff Briggs looked up slowly. "Mrs. Mercer," he said evenly, "you got recorded easement paperwork for this road? We maintain it." "That's not what I asked." Her jaw tightened. "The subdivision has controlled access here for years." "Again," Briggs said calmly, "that's not ownership." Ty stepped forward immediately. "This guy's twisting things." The sheriff held up one hand without looking at him. "Son, stop talking." Ty stopped talking. Briggs looked back at Denise. "Do you have any legal documentation showing Blackwater Pines owns this bridge or road access?" Silence. Wind pushed across the spillway below us. Water thundered softly beneath the concrete. Denise crossed her arms tighter. We've always operated it. The sheriff nodded once, then folded the plat map carefully. Until ownership gets clarified, you can't block access to somebody claiming legal ingress rights, especially not with barriers. This road protects our residents, Denise snapped. No, Briggs replied quietly. Paperwork protects residents. That hit harder than if he'd yelled. Ty looked genuinely nervous now. Briggs pointed toward the concrete barriers. Move these. Denise didn't move. Sheriff, you don't understand what happens if outsiders start using this road freely. I watched Briggs' expression change slightly at the word outsiders. You charging tolls out here often? Nobody answered. That was answer enough. Briggs handed my documents back. Mr. Cole, I suggest you speak with a property attorney immediately. I plan to. He nodded toward Denise. And I suggest everybody stops pretending assumptions are deeds. Ty dragged the first barrier aside without another word. As I eased the truck forward, Denise stepped toward my window one last time. The polished smile was gone now. Only anger left. This isn't over, she said quietly. I looked past her toward the spillway. Didn't think it was. I drove slowly across the bridge while Briggs remained standing beside the barriers, watching Denise Mercer unravel in silence. That night, back at the ranch, I called the number Walter Griggs had texted me earlier that afternoon. Julia Reyes answered on the second ring. Reyes Law. My name's Ethan Cole, I said. And I think I accidentally bought an HOA's entire entrance road. Silence. Then one short laugh. Well, she said. That sounds expensive for somebody. Julia Reyes arrived at the ranch the next morning in a dusty dark green Tacoma with legal folders stacked across the passenger seat. Mid-50s. Sharp eyes. No wasted movement. She spent less than 2 minutes looking at the survey maps before pulling reading glasses from her coat pocket. Where's the original plat? I handed it over. Wind rolled across the pasture outside, while she spread the paperwork across my kitchen table, in neat rows like evidence already heading toward court. County tax records, Army Corps easements, parcel overlays, the yellow toll receipt. Julia studied everything in silence. Finally, she leaned back in the chair. Okay, she said calmly. This is worse than you think. That's encouraging. No recorded easement, no right-of-way transfer, no maintenance agreement, nothing. She tapped the plat map with one finger. Legally speaking, Blackwater Pines HOA doesn't own the bridge, the spillway access road, or the maintenance corridor. And Denise knows it. Julia looked up sharply. You sure? She saw the documents last night. Her face changed. That means she's dangerous now. I nodded once, because I already understood the problem. People panic differently when money's involved, but people panic worst when authority starts slipping away. Julia pointed toward the toll receipt. How long's she been collecting these? Walter Griggs says around 14 years. Julia gave a low whistle. Then, every receipt is potential evidence. She pulled a yellow legal pad from her briefcase and started writing fast. Trespass, unauthorized toll collection, fraudulent liens if she follows through, interference with access rights, potential misuse of emergency infrastructure. The list kept growing. What do? I asked. Julia stopped writing. Nothing. I frowned. Nothing. Correct. She capped the pen. You do not threaten her. You do not block the road. You do not post signs. You let Denise Mercer keep acting like Denise Mercer. That sounds risky. It's profitable. The corner of her mouth twitched slightly. She's emotional. You're documented. That's a very uneven fight. A truck engine echoed outside. We both looked toward the window. Old Ranch Ford. Walter Griggs climbed out slowly wearing a canvas coat and mud-covered boots. He carried a thermos in one hand. Julia glanced at me. That him? Yeah. Walter stepped into the kitchen without knocking. You the lawyer? He asked Julia. That obvious? You got the same expression my ex-wife had during divorce court. Julia actually smiled at that. Walter looked down at the survey maps covering the table. So it's true. Looks that way, I said. Walter shook his head slowly. Lord Almighty. He poured coffee into a tin cup from the thermos and sat down heavily. You know how many people she's scared with that road? Julia looked interested immediately. Walter pointed toward the mountains beyond the lake. Every winter she decides who gets contractors first after storms, who gets plow priority, who gets delivery access. His jaw tightened. 3 years ago, she threatened to fine the Holloways because their daughter parked overnight near the spillway during a snow closure. Holloways? Julia asked. Grace Holloway and her husband. Old couple over in phase 2. Walter stared into the coffee. Her husband missed dialysis 1 week because Denise refused after-hours gate access for a transport van she didn't approve. The room went quiet. Even Julia stopped writing for a second. That documented? She asked carefully. Walter nodded once. Sheriff Briggs responded that night. Julia looked at me. See why, I said. Let her keep digging. Headlights suddenly flashed across the kitchen window. Fast. Aggressive. Ty Mercer's pickup tore up the ranch road and stopped hard beside the barn. Doors slammed. I stepped outside first. Ty and 2 men wearing reflective safety vests were already walking toward the creek, carrying chainsaws and survey flags. What are you doing? I called out. Ty didn't stop walking. HOA maintenance. On my property? He pointed toward the spillway access line. Brush clearing around community infrastructure. Walter muttered something under his breath behind me. I walked downhill toward them. That's when I saw it. The heavy ranch gate chain beside the spillway trail had been cut clean through. Bolt cutters. Fresh metal marks still bright against the steel. My stomach hardened instantly. One of the workers fired up a chainsaw. I pulled my phone out and started recording. Turn that off, Ty snapped. No. He kept walking anyway. The chainsaw roared to life near the creek bank while one of the men kicked over a survey marker stake. Deliberately. Julia stepped beside me now, watching everything. Perfect, she said quietly. Ty heard her. You people think paperwork means something out here? Julia folded her arms. In court? Usually. Ty smirked. Good luck proving anything. Then he turned and pointed toward the spillway road. My mother says this valley belongs to people who built it. I looked past him toward the cut chain hanging open beside the gate. No, I said evenly. Your mother thinks ownership and control are the same thing. Ty's expression darkened. Behind him, the chainsaw bit into the first cedar tree, and standing there listening to wood crack beside the spillway, I realized something important. Denise Mercer wasn't slowing down. She was escalating, which meant Julia Reyes had been right. The smartest thing I could do now was let her. That became harder 3 days later when smoke started rolling across the south pasture. I smelled it before I saw it. Sharp cedar smoke drifting through the open barn doors while I was repairing a water trough line near the corrals. At first, I figured somebody up near Blackwater Pines was burning brush piles after the wind shift. Then my phone buzzed. Walter Griggs. You seeing this smoke? Yeah. It jumped the creek. I was already moving before he finished the sentence. By the time I reached the spillway trail in the F-350, flames were crawling through dry grass 50 yards inside my property line. Wind coming down off the ridge shoved sparks across the creek while thick black smoke rolled over the lake. 3 men stood near the bridge with shovels. Ty Mercer was one of them. None looked remotely prepared for the fire they'd started. A half-burned pile of cedar branches smoldered beside the spillway road. No containment trench, no water tank, no county burn marker. Nothing. I stopped the truck hard beside the creek. What the hell did you do? Ty turned immediately defensive. Controlled burn. That fire crossed onto my land. The wind changed. Flames snapped through grass behind him as if to prove the point. I grabbed the extinguisher from the truck bed and started knocking down spot fires near the fence line, while one of Ty's men fumbled with a garden sprayer that barely reached the creek bank. The whole operation looked amateur, dangerously amateur. Within minutes, volunteer fire trucks came screaming down the dam road. Sheriff Briggs arrived right behind them. The fire crews moved fast, cutting a wet line across the pasture before the flames reached the barn. Smoke swallowed the lower field while black ash drifted across the lake like dirty snow. By sunset, they finally had it contained. 3 acres burned, half my cedar fence gone. One equipment shed scorched badly enough the siding peeled off in strips. Sheriff Briggs stood near the spillway taking statements, while county fire investigators photographed the burn site. Ty kept pacing near the bridge, muttering about wind conditions. Then Denise Mercer arrived. Perfect hair, clean boots, clipboard in hand, like she was showing up for a zoning meeting instead of a fire. She walked directly toward the investigators. "This was a permitted HOA vegetation management operation," she announced loudly. One of the county fire inspectors looked up from his notepad. "Can I see the permit?" Denise blinked once. "It was authorized internally." "That's not what I asked." I almost smiled hearing that line again. The inspector held out his hand patiently. "No county permit means unauthorized burn activity." Ty started talking immediately. "We had it under control until the wind. You had shovels." The inspector cut in flatly. "You were burning beside dry grass and federal spillway timber." Silence. Denise's jaw tightened. Sheriff Briggs walked over slowly. "Miss Mercer, were you aware this burn crossed onto Mr. Cole's property?" "It was accidental." "That wasn't my question." The sheriff's tone stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. Denise glanced toward me standing beside the burned fence posts. For a second, I saw something new in her expression. Not arrogance, calculation. She was realizing the paper trail was getting bigger. The county inspector closed his notebook. "I'll file this as negligent spread from unauthorized burn activity pending review." Ty looked sick hearing that. Denise recovered faster. "Mr. Cole has been harassing our community for weeks," she said sharply. "Residents feel threatened." Briggs looked at the scorched pasture, then at the cut chain still hanging near the spillway gate, then at the blackened remains of my cedar fencing. "I'm seeing one property damaged right now," he said evenly. Denise's face went cold. That night I added new photographs to the Blackwater Pines folder. Burn reports, fence damage, county investigator cards. Julia Reyes called 20 minutes later. I already heard. Small town. Sheriff Briggs faxed me the preliminary incident summary. Papers shuffled on her end. Ocklide burn operations tied directly to HOA personnel. "Ethan, she's burying herself. She doesn't know how to stop." "No," Julia agreed quietly. "People like Denise usually mistake escalation for strength." The next morning things got worse. I opened my laptop and found my face plastered across the Blackwater Pines community Facebook page. A grainy photo of me beside the bridge. Big bold caption underneath. "Outsider threatens Blackwater community access." Below it, Denise had written 3 full paragraphs claiming I intended to seize the dam road, block emergency vehicles, and destroy property values across the valley. Hundreds of comments, most from residents I'd never met. "Protect our neighborhood. Keep him out. HOA strong." Then I noticed something else. A new announcement pinned to the top of the page. "Emergency HOA community meeting Tuesday. 7 p.m. Blackwater Pines Clubhouse mandatory attendance requested." Julia called again before noon. "Tell me you screenshotted all of it." "Already did." "Good. Public defamation tied to a pending property dispute." I heard her exhale slowly. "She's panicking." I looked back at the photo Denise had posted, taken from the spillway road, my road. "She thinks she can scare the neighborhood into protecting her." "She probably can," Julia said. "At least until somebody asks the wrong question in public." Outside, smoke still drifted faintly over the blackened pasture. I closed the laptop slowly. "Then maybe," I said. "It's time somebody asked it." Tuesday night, I parked 2 blocks away from the Blackwater Pines clubhouse and walked the rest of the distance. The building sat above the lake on a small ridge overlooking the spillway road, like somebody had designed it specifically to watch who came and went. Every parking spot was full. Pickup trucks, SUVs, golf carts. Fear fills rooms faster than it ever does, and Denise Mercer had spent days feeding this neighborhood both. I carried one thing under my arm, a plain manila envelope. Nothing written on it. Inside was empty. That part mattered. Julia Reyes met me near the entrance wearing a charcoal coat and carrying a legal pad. "You sure about this?" she asked quietly. "I'm not showing the documents." "Good." She looked toward the packed clubhouse windows. "Because once the deed comes out publicly, this turns nuclear." I glanced at the crowd gathering inside. "I think we're already there." The room went quiet when I stepped through the doors. Over 100 people, packed into folding chairs, facing a projector screen at the front of the clubhouse. And right there on the wall behind the podium, my face. Denise had blown up the Facebook photo into a giant slide titled, "Threat to Blackwater Access." The room smelled like coffee, damp jackets, and tension. Sheriff Briggs stood quietly near the back wall with his arms crossed, not in uniform tonight, still watching. Grace Holloway sat near the middle row beside an oxygen tank bag that probably belonged to her husband. When she noticed me enter, fear crossed her face first. Then something else. Hope. Denise Mercer stood behind the podium, holding a wooden gavel she absolutely did not need. Her smile widened when she saw me. "Well," she announced into the microphone, "looks like Mr. Cole decided to join us after all." A few nervous laughs scattered through the room. Most people stayed silent. Denise launched immediately into her speech. She talked about property values, community safety, outside threats. She called me reckless, said I intended to seize the damn road and cut off emergency access. Every sentence pushed the room tighter, more anxious, more divided, and every lie made Sheriff Briggs' expression flatten a little more against the back wall. Then Denise held up a paper. "This man is already threatening legal action against Blackwater Pines after only 2 weeks in this valley." Murmurs rolled through the crowd. I stayed seated, quiet. That bothered her more than interruption would have, because loud opposition creates villains. Silence creates doubt. Denise pointed toward me dramatically. "Mr. Cole wants control of our road." Finally, I stood up. The room instantly fell still. I walked slowly down the aisle carrying the manila envelope while Denise watched me like she expected a fight. I stopped beside the podium. Didn't take the microphone. Didn't open the envelope. I just looked out across the room at all the residents. Denise Mercer had spent years intimidating. Then I asked one question. "Can anybody here show me the recorded easement?" Nothing. No movement. No answer. Only the low hum of the projector fan behind Denise. I let the silence stretch. 10 seconds. 15. Long enough for people to start looking at each other. Finally, Denise laughed sharply into the microphone. "We don't need an easement. That road has always belonged to Blackwater Pines." There it was. Out loud. Publicly. Exactly what Julia had hoped for. I looked toward Sheriff Briggs at the back wall. He didn't move. But he heard it. So did every phone pointed toward the podium, and sitting beside the stage near the HOA secretary table, a court stenographer. Julia had arranged that part quietly after seeing Denise advertise an official emergency proceeding. The woman's fingers moved rapidly across the keys, recording every word. I turned back toward the room. "Has anyone here actually seen a deed proving HOA ownership?" This time, people started shifting uneasily. One man near the front frowned at Denise. A woman whispered something to her husband. Grace Holloway slowly lifted her head. Denise's voice sharpened. "This outsider is trying to manipulate you." "No," I said calmly. "I'm asking for paperwork." She slammed the gavel once, hard. "You have no authority here." I looked around the room. "That's interesting." The silence after that landed heavier than shouting ever could, because people were starting to realize something simple. Denise still hadn't answered the question. A younger resident stood up near the side wall. "Wait," he said cautiously. "There is an easement, though, right?" Denise snapped toward him immediately. "Sit down, Connor." Wrong move. The room felt it. Fear changed shape right there. Not gone, but cracking. I finally lifted the empty manila envelope slightly. "Everything involving this road gets discussed publicly in county court Thursday morning," I said. "Anyone who wants facts instead of speeches should come." Denise stepped toward me fast. "You don't threaten this community." I met her eyes evenly. "I'm not the one threatening them." That hit harder than I expected, because suddenly nobody in the room looked at me anymore. They looked at her, at the gavel, at the giant projector slide, at the woman who still hadn't produced a single legal document. Sheriff Briggs pushed away from the back wall, not aggressive, just enough movement for people to notice him leaving. And once the sheriff walked out without backing Denise publicly, the mood inside the room shifted completely. Questions started immediately. Why hasn't anyone seen the easement? How long has the HOA owned the road? Wait, does the county know about this? Denise tried to regain control by banging the gavel again, but she'd already lost the room. I turned quietly and walked toward the exit. Behind me, voices kept rising. Not panic anymore. Anger. Real anger. At the doors, Grace Holloway caught my sleeve gently as I passed. Her hands trembled. "Please," she whispered, eyes wet, "don't close that road." I looked back toward the crowd surrounding Denise Mercer, then toward the spillway lights outside the clubhouse windows. "I'm not trying to take the road away from the valley," I told her softly. "I'm trying to take it away from her." Grace Holloway held my sleeve another second before letting go. Behind us, shouting kept building inside the clubhouse. Not panic, not confusion. Questions, and Denise Mercer had spent too many years making sure nobody asked them. By Thursday morning, she was desperate enough to make another mistake. I found out at 6:40 a.m. the damn road was blocked again. This time with county-style barricades chained across the spillway entrance and 2 Blackwater Pines private access signs bolted directly into the guardrails. Ty Mercer stood near the barriers with 3 HOA volunteers wearing reflective vests and nailed beside the gate a copy of a lien notice against my ranch. I parked 20 yards away and stepped out slowly. Cold mountain pushed across the lake while the spillway thundered below us. Ty folded his arms immediately. "You got served." I walked closer to the paper. Blackwater Pines HOA property enforcement lien outstanding violations and community damages amount due. $18,430. I almost admired the number. Ambitious. "You filed a lien over fence paint and a burn your people started." Ty smirked. "Should cooperated." I took out my phone and photographed everything. The barriers, the signs, the lien. Then I looked at him. "You know this road isn't yours." His expression flickered fast, but enough. Before he could answer, engines echoed up the county road behind me. 3 sheriff SUVs, 1 county fire marshal truck, and Julia Reyes Tacoma right behind them. Ty's smirk vanished immediately. Sheriff Briggs stepped out first, holding a thick document folder under one arm. County deputies followed him toward the barriers while the fire marshal photographed the signs Denise had bolted into the spillway rails. Julia walked up beside me, carrying rolled survey maps. "Morning," she said calmly. "Looks crowded." Ty looked toward the subdivision entrance, probably expecting his mother. Instead, residents started arriving. Word spreads fast in small valleys. Within minutes, people from Blackwater Pines lined both sides of the road, watching deputies gather around the barricades. Grace Holloway stood near the back, wrapped in a heavy coat beside her husband's medical transport van. Walter Griggs arrived carrying coffee like he'd come for entertainment. Sheriff Briggs unfolded the lien paperwork slowly, then looked directly at Ty. "Where's your mother?" "On her way, good." The sheriff's tone carried something different now. Not caution, decision. Julia handed him certified copies of the plats and county tax records. The deputies spread the documents across the hood of an SUV, while residents tried to peek over shoulders. Briggs raised his voice, just enough for the crowd to hear. For the record, county survey verification confirms the spillway bridge, maintenance corridor, and dam access roadway all sit within parcel ownership belonging to Mr. Ethan Cole. Silence rolled through the crowd. Real silence. The kind that physically changes a place. One resident actually laughed in disbelief. Another turned slowly toward the barricades, like they'd suddenly become illegal right in front of him. Ty looked pale. Then Denise Mercer's Lexus came flying around the subdivision corner. She stepped out already talking. "This road is under HOA emergency authority and..." Sheriff Briggs cut her off immediately. "No, it isn't." The force of that landing publicly stopped her cold. Briggs held up the certified plat map. "You filed a lien against private property over violations your HOA has no jurisdiction to enforce." Denise recovered fast. "We maintain this road." Julia stepped forward smoothly. "Maintenance does not create ownership under Montana property law." Residents kept moving closer now. Close enough to hear every word. Denise noticed too. That was when the panic finally showed. Not anger, panic. She pointed toward me sharply. "He's manipulating these people to seize community infrastructure." Julia unrolled the flood control easement directly across the hood of the sheriff SUV. Army Corps SEALs flashed under the morning light. "The infrastructure already belongs to him," she said calmly. That one sentence detonated through the crowd. People started talking all at once. "What? You serious? The HOA never owned it?" Grace Holloway covered her mouth with one shaking hand. Walter Griggs just muttered, "Lord have mercy." Sheriff Briggs turned toward the barriers. "Remove these immediately." Ty hesitated. One deputy stepped forward. That hesitation ended right there. The HOA volunteers started dragging barriers aside while residents watched in complete silence. Denise looked around at the crowd she'd controlled for years and realized nobody was listening anymore. Then the fire marshal spoke up. "One more thing." Everybody turned. He held up the burn investigation report. "The unauthorized fire last week originated from HOA-directed activity conducted without county permit approval." Another wave hit the crowd, harder this time. One woman near the back shouted, "You told us Ethan started that fire." Denise snapped toward her instantly. "That is not what I said. You posted it online." Phones started coming out everywhere now. Residents pulling up screenshots, talking over each other. Ty looked trapped. Briggs handed the lien paperwork back to Denise. "This filing is being formally challenged in county court this afternoon." Julia folded her arms. "And after that," she said evenly, "we'll discuss 14 years of unauthorized toll collection." That landed like a gunshot, because suddenly everybody in Blackwater Pines understood the real number. 14 years, thousands of crossings, thousands of payments, collected by an HOA that never owned the road. Denise's face drained white. For the first time since this started, she looked small, not powerful, not polished, just cornered. Julia leaned toward me quietly while chaos spread through the residents behind us. "Now," she said softly, "we decide whether the HOA survives this." County court started at 1 sharp. By 12:30, every seat inside courtroom 3B was filled. Residents from Blackwater Pines lined the back wall shoulder to shoulder. Some looked angry, some embarrassed. Most looked like people waking up from a long, expensive mistake. Denise Mercer sat at the defense table beside a young attorney who looked overwhelmed before the hearing even started. Ty sat behind them, staring at the floor. Julia organized our evidence into neat stacks across the table without saying much. That was one thing I'd noticed about good lawyers. The dangerous ones stay calm. Judge Avery walked in exactly on time. Gray-haired, thin glasses, no patience in his face whatsoever. "Be seated." The room settled instantly. Julia stood first. "Your Honor." We move for immediate dismissal of the lien filed by Blackwater Pines HOA against my client Ethan Cole and request preliminary findings regarding unauthorized access control and fraudulent property enforcement. Judge Avery nodded once. Proceed. Julia moved fast. The yellow toll receipt hit the evidence screen first, then photographs of the barriers, then county plats, Army Corps easement records, tax documents. Every piece lined up cleanly and logically. No drama, just facts. That was worse for Denise than yelling ever could been. Julia pointed toward the survey map projected behind the judge. The spillway bridge, dam road, and maintenance corridor sit entirely within parcel ownership transferred legally to Mr. Cole during county sale proceedings 11 days prior to this dispute. The judge adjusted his glasses slightly. Any challenge to the survey accuracy? Denise's attorney stood awkwardly. Your Honor, Blackwater Pines has maintained the roadway for over a decade under implied community authority. Judge Avery cut him off immediately. Maintenance is not ownership. The room went dead quiet. Julia continued without missing rhythm. Furthermore, the HOA has collected tolls from residents and non-residents, despite holding no recorded easement, no maintenance transfer agreement, and no county authorization to restrict access. A murmur rolled through the courtroom gallery. Walter Griggs sat in the second row, grinning openly now. Grace Holloway held her husband's hand tightly beside him. Julia switched the screen again. Facebook screenshots appeared next. Denise's public posts accusing me of threatening the community. Claims that I intended to block emergency access. Claims that I started the fire. Judge Avery read silently for several seconds, then looked directly at Denise. Did you publish these statements? Her attorney answered carefully. My client acted in good faith to protect community interests. That was not my question. The attorney stopped talking. Denise finally spoke herself. Yes. Julia immediately slid another document forward. County Fire Investigation Report. Unauthorized HOA burn operation. Negligent spread determination. Ty looked physically ill now. Judge Avery scanned the report slowly. Then he looked toward the sheriff seated near the rear wall. Sheriff Briggs, were you present during access disputes involving this roadway? Briggs stood. Yes, Your Honor. Did the HOA provide legal proof of ownership at any point? No, sir. Did they restrict access anyway? Yes, sir. The judge nodded once. That answer mattered. A lot. Julia waited exactly long enough for it to settle before introducing the final stack. Financial records, bank transfers, HOA landscaping invoices. Payments made directly to Mercer Outdoor Services, LLC, owned by Ty Mercer, year after year. No bidding process, no contractor competition. Just HOA money cycling directly into Denise's family business while residents paid rising dues and illegal tolls. The courtroom exploded into whispers. One HOA board member near the back actually stood up mid-hearing. Another followed him toward the exit without saying a word. Denise turned around sharply. Sit down. Neither man stopped walking. That moment hurt her worse than anything Julia had presented all afternoon. Because fear was leaving the room, and once fear leaves, authority usually goes with it. Judge Avery removed his glasses slowly. Mrs. Mercer, he said evenly, did your HOA knowingly enforce restrictions on property outside its jurisdiction? Denise straightened immediately. We protected this community for years. That is not responsive. We maintained that road because nobody else would. You charged tolls on land your HOA did not own. Silence. The judge glanced down at the lien paperwork one final time, then signed the dismissal order right there on the bench. The lien against Mr. Cole's property is vacated immediately. A sharp breath escaped somewhere behind me in the gallery. Grace Holloway started crying quietly. Judge Avery continued. Preliminary findings further establish probable misconduct involving unauthorized enforcement actions, defamation, interference with property access, and potential financial abuse pending formal civil review. Denise looked stunned hearing the words spoken out loud. Not defensive anymore, not polished, just exposed. Then the judge leaned back slightly and looked directly at me for the first time all day. Mr. Cole. Yes, sir. You now hold uncontested ownership of the roadway and spillway access corridor in question. I nodded once. The judge folded his hands. What exactly do you intend to do with it? Every resident in the courtroom went completely still, because suddenly the whole valley understood something at the same time. I could close the road tomorrow if I wanted. And every person in Blackwater Pines knew Denise Mercer had pushed me hard enough to justify it. I looked back toward Grace Holloway, toward Walter, toward the residents who'd spent years being controlled by fear, disguised as community management. Then I looked at the judge and answered, I'm keeping it open. The courtroom stayed silent for a full second. Then Grace Holloway lowered her face into her hands and cried, not loud, not dramatic, just the sound of somebody finally setting down fear after carrying it too long. Judge Avery looked at me over his glasses. On what term, Mr. Cole? I stood straight. Permanent recorded easement for residents and emergency services. No tolls, no HOA checkpoints, no gates, no permit stickers. Ambulances, school buses, delivery trucks, contractors, families, they cross free. Denise turned toward me like she'd been slapped. You can't just take our authority. Julia Reyes didn't even look at her. He owns the road. That ended the argument before it started. Judge Avery nodded slowly. Mrs. Reyes, draft it. My office will review. Julia closed her folder. Already started, Your Honor. The judge's mouth barely moved, but I think he almost smiled. 2 weeks later, the easement was recorded at the county clerk's office. 3 pages, plain language, strong enough to outlast every HOA board that came after it. The road stayed mine. The access stayed theirs. And Blackwater Pines HOA lost every inch of control over it. Denise Mercer did not go quietly. People like her rarely do. She tried blaming bad legal advice. Then old records, then me, then Sheriff Briggs, then the fire marshal. But the residents had already seen the tax records, the toll receipts, the lien dismissal, and the payments to Ty's fake landscaping company. Fear broke all at once. The recall vote happened on a Friday night in the same clubhouse where she'd called me a threat. This time I wasn't there. Didn't need to be. Walter texted me the result at 9:14 p.m. Denise out. 78-6. A second message came 30 seconds later. Grace's daughter elected interim president. I sat on the porch reading that message while cold wind rolled down off Blackwater Lake. For the first time since I bought the place, the valley felt quiet in the right way. Not scared, just quiet. County investigators opened financial reviews the following Monday. Ty's company lost its contracts. 2 board members resigned. Denise's Lexus disappeared from the clubhouse parking lot before the month was over. By spring, the signs at the spillway were gone. No orange cones, no barricades, no clipboard, no blue permit stickers. Just the damn road, the bridge, and the lake shining hard under Montana sun. The new interim board filed one request with the county. Rename the bridge. The old survey name had been Blackwater Spillway Access. The residents voted to change it to Cole Crossing. I told them they didn't have to. Grace Holloway told me to hush and sign the acknowledgement. So I did. One cold morning months later, I drove the HOA 350 across the bridge at sunrise, with my ranch dog sitting in the passenger seat where the closing packet used to ride. The spillway thundered below. Mist lifted off the lake. On the south end of the bridge stood a cedar sign I carved myself and set into concrete with Walter's help. Private land, you're still welcome. That was the whole point. Not revenge, not control. Just the truth, finally nailed where everybody could see it. In the barn, next to the framed county plat and the court order vacating the lien, I hung one more thing. The blue HOA permit sticker Ty Mercer had slapped onto my windshield the first morning. Lot access temporary pass. I kept it because it reminded me how this started. A woman with a clipboard thought authority came from blocking a road. She forgot authority without truth is just noise. And land has a way of remembering who actually owns it. The man they called an outsider became the only reason the valley crossed that bridge without fear.
You know, the older I get, the more I think this story wasn't about a bridge at all. It's more about what happens when people stop asking for a roof and start accepting control just because somebody speaks confidently enough. Ethan never won by yelling louder. He won because he stayed calm, kept record, and remembered that truth doesn't need to rush. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stand their ground without losing their dignity. And maybe that's a real lesson here. Land matters, community matters, but power without honesty eventually falls apart under its own weight. In the end, the broad stayed open, people kept getting home safely, and fear stopped deciding who belonged there. That's worth more than any lawsuits or title paper ever could be. Now, I'd really glad to hear from you. If you ever deal with an HOA, a property dispute, or somebody trying to push people around with a fake authority, drop us just it down in the comments or just tell us where you're watching from tonight. And if stories like this remind you that quiet strength still matter in this country, go ahead and subscribe. There are plenty more land and HOA story waiting just down the road.